seating area.
Yeah, one end was closed off,
Yeah.
but then you've got the 3 other sides, haven't you?
Yeah.
So it's not too bad.
So
you get a lot of people.
nobody is miles away.
From my experience as well, like the last time I saw a live event in the O2, it was a good show, but the sound quality was very poor. You know, the music wasn't that loud.
Yeah.
But at the Wembley, the music was booming. It was so loud.
Yeah, there's been a few issues with that, with the acoustic coming off it. Like the sound just doesn't get around, and it's harder apparently to create an atmosphere in the O2 than it is at Wembley. I think O2 really was more set up for the music type stuff, the concerts. It always has had problems with generating that kind of atmosphere. Although the UK fans, whenever Raw does hit here, normally are very, very vocal anyway. So it on TV, it's absolutely fine. But if you're there, you're like, hang on a minute, it doesn't sound that loud as it should. But that sounds really good, Matt. I'm glad you had a good time, and I take it your wife enjoyed it as well. You know, taking her there, getting her more involved in the wrestling.
That's how you know you're having a good time, because, you know, when I'm appreciating it as a wrestling fan, she's going in there as someone who doesn't know so much about wrestling, and she was doing more chants than I was. So she definitely had a good time.
That's good. So happy about that. I mean, there's a few things in that, Matt, I think we should take as well. Is that it's funny that Sasha Banks was there, though. I'm quite surprised about that. I will say that much, that they had her there.
Totally surprised. Yeah, I mean, I was not expecting that at all, especially a title match, a rematch. I was kind of feeling like, one, like she should be rested to sort of make her comeback a bit more dramatic, and two, like if she's there fighting for the title, she's got to lose again, and you don't really want to see that. Sure,
yeah. Did they have any of the cruiserweights there at all?
No, not really. Only Neville was there. Of course, Neville had to play to the crowd a bit, didn't he? But he's not technically under that umbrella yet, is he?
Yep, fair enough. Okay, yeah, sounds really good. And of course, WWE this week is in the UK. Both Raw and SmackDown are going to be there. I'm not going to hold out too much hope for SmackDown's ratings this week with tomorrow's news. Of course, all of our listeners in the US with the presidential outcome tomorrow, so it's going to be a hard one for SmackDown tomorrow. I can tell you that much, to get their ratings up. But good luck with that. Now, we were scheduled to have our good friend Daniel Puder come on the show, but unfortunately something's come up. It's literally been our luck this evening where he can't come on. But he is going to be with us next Monday, and he's going to actually review UFC 205, which makes history because for the first time it takes place in New York City since MMA has, the ban's been lifted, and of course the commissions have accepted it now, and UFC Madison Square Garden, which is, it's a huge deal, Matt, because it gets them in another area, and everybody knows the history of the Garden, and it's predominantly been your boxing, and of course loads of WWF, WWE history in there. But now we get to see MMA, and of course in this instance UFC take their place, and it's we've already said this, Matt. It's been a huge year for UFC in terms of everything that's happened for them. Reaching the milestone of UFC 200. We see Brock Lesnar back there. We didn't think that would happen. We've had two amazing matches between Diaz and McGregor. We've now got this, and even before the year's out, Matt. Friday, Friday the 30th, I think it is. Ronda Rousey makes an amazing return, and apparently that one is the one that's going to be crazy on buy rates. But and of course, not failing that, Matt, the sale of UFC, 4 billion. I think the figure came. So I mean, everything is going very well for UFC. But this week, Matt, in particular, getting in at the Garden is going to be quite a big deal. Will you be watching that, or is that a stupid question?
Was it this weekend?
This Saturday, I believe.
Yeah, I won't watch it live, but I will pick it up the day after and skim through it and pick out the matches that I'm most interested for. Yeah. So it's always a bit harder to watch it over here live, though, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, you've got to be literally. I mean, it's worse than WWE because the fights are a lot later. They go out a lot later, and it's just a nightmare. Like I think I can remember watching the Rousey match at the last one that she had. It was almost 7 a.m. I mean, it's a long stint to go through, from getting
getting at a place from about 7 p.m. the night before, you are absolutely knackered by the time the main event comes on, and you're like, I might as well just have woke up early that morning, to watch this. But yeah, I mean, I think this one's going to be great. I mean, I'm no expert on UFC, but I'm telling you, I've looked at the card, and man, this card, I have to say this, Matt, I think this card is going to be even better than 200. Because
there's top names on there.
There's probably about, I'd say, 10 fights that I'm legitimately interested in, and I know enough about each person in each of those fights, especially these two Polish girls. That looks like a hell of a fight that's going to go on that night, and of course McGregor and Alves, sells itself. But I mean, there's a ton of good stuff going on in this show, and I mean they're saying that it's only going to be six main fights on the actual pay-per-view itself, and then you've got the preliminary matches and all the rest of it. But I'm telling you, even in those matches, there's like Rashad Evans. He's not even on the main pay-per-view bit. So it's a really crazy card, and definitely nobody's going to be disappointed. Matt, just in terms of UFC getting in to New York, is that a sort of a huge sort of step now? And would WWE and sort of other sports start to fear just how bigger this could get now that they have finally made it to New York?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a status kind of thing, isn't it? You want to have your event there because it is the place to be seen, isn't it? Madison Square Garden. Mm-hmm. It is one of the most famous arenas in the world. Mm-hmm. So if you can get in there, you should, because it does so much to advertise your company as well, just being in there. Just the fact that you can actually put a show on in there. Yeah, and I think hitting the New York audience, great idea as well there, because there's a lot of people in there who like a bit of they're kind of a bit of a rowdy crowd, maybe they like a bit of violence. Yeah,
I mean there's no doubt that's going to sell like hotcakes. There's no two. In fact, I think it's already broke records. They announced that like a couple of weeks ago, so they've done a great job. But it's been no secret. UFC I can't remember the first time UFC was sniffing around trying to get in New York, but it was a long time ago. It was probably in the days of Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell, that kind of era, where they were trying to get MMA sort of licensed and all the rest of it. But they had so much problems because of, and this is because UFC's come up so fast. I mean, if you think about it, Matt, 1993 UFC started, and you look at where it's come from its very naive early days, the way they used to do it. You look at where it is now, I would say it's as fast grown up as a company as WWE had done from the 80s when Vince McMahon took over. I mean, it's that sort of model, isn't it? It's almost grown as quick as WWE has in that sort of span of time. And it's not a long time when you think about it, when you consider everything else. But you look at the evolution of it, and it's become, every time I see it, Matt, it just seems to become more and more professional. Everything looks good. The presentation's excellent. And, when you look back at it, I know the days of Dan Severn and, Royce Gracie and Ken Shamrock, crazy days when you just used to get this any weight class. There were no rounds. It was bare knuckle. It's crazy. And of course, it was considered as barbaric, and a lot of people looked at it as sort of like, a backyard fight, which, I can see why people would have that perception. But you look at where Dana White has taken his company, because when he took over, they didn't even have, they couldn't even get on TV. They didn't even have a pay-per-view deal. So to see where they've come now, Matt, and the sort of stars that they've made, shows you that they've definitely taken this to another level. And, I've always said this, I don't think that WWE and UFC are competition to one another, because I genuinely think they're really different from one another, and I think fans will watch both. I don't think there has to be, you've got to watch one or the other. It's like you just watch both, because they're two completely different products and sports and whatnot. So, but there are a lot of crossovers, as we've seen with your likes of Brock Lesnar, with your likes of CM Punk, and vice versa into our stuff. So. It's going to be a great show. I'd recommend anybody that can get hold of it to watch it. And of course, in this country, if you are fortunate to have BT Sport, you're not even going to pay a dime You literally got that there, so I recommend anybody tuning into that. So I'm not sure I'll be watching it live, as Matt said. I think I'm with him. I'll probably watch it straight after, though, like the day after. I'll have that on record and sit down and watch that. And we'll be looking forward next week to having Daniel Puder on, who, of course, an unbeaten MMA fighter himself, and of course former WWE Tough Enough, the only $1 million Tough Enough champion. Even though, if you go back on our interview with Daniel Puder, the first one we did, you'll find out just how much of that million he got. not a lot of it, let's put it that way. Very typical false advertising that was. Okay, Matt, well, I think we should talk a little bit about Survivor Series. Of course, I don't want to go too in-depth for it because we are going to have a full preview on the show, but coming off the back of last week, Matt, everything we spoke about in our podcast kind of happened. We saw Seth Rollins, sort of almost teaming up in a way, and I thought, oh, here we go. That's all happening. And first of all, Matt, what was your take on the whole Goldberg thing? Because, of course, everybody's first reaction was he slipped. Look at him. Was you happy at the way they delivered? Do you think the reaction was right? Because for me, the fans were definitely cheering for him, but I did feel it was a little bit forced as well.
Yeah, definitely Paul Heyman was still trying to get people to cheer, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was still trying to throw that out there, especially when he brings out the statement like, cheering for Goldberg pisses Brock Lesnar off. And of course, everybody wants to see Brock Lesnar pissed off.
Yeah.
So kind of really backing them into the corner going, come on, you want to cheer for Goldberg. You want to see an angry Brock Lesnar come Survivor Series, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I just felt it was a bit phased and forced. And then, what did you first of all make of Rusev coming down and being the sort of antagonizer? Like, it's that. I mean, I don't know what I made of that, but I just thought, well, that's Rusev's completely dead and buried now. He's been beaten up by Roman the last 3-4 months. Now he's just out there to do what I think I'm going to call this a new part. I think I'm going to call it the Rock Squash, which is virtually what I saw at WrestleMania this year when poor old, Eric Rowan, oh my goodness. The poor guy was just put in a 10-second match. And literally Rusev had that sort of treatment. You knew it was going to come off bad for him. There was no way Rusev was going to come out of this well when he came down. But, I mean, sometimes I just think to myself, of all the people to send down there, does it have to be Rusev? It could have been anybody. Anyone in the locker room that's a heel could have had that spot. It might have done a lot more for somebody else, but they have to go with the biggest guy one of the biggest guy who's got the same sort of frame as a Goldberg. He's been presented a lot like Goldberg, and what do? They just kill his gimmick straight away. I just don't get why they have to use someone like Rusev. But what's your take on that, Matt? And then the slip up, and he finally did get the jackhammer. But what did you think about it?
Yeah, it really didn't do anything for me, especially with the Rusev part, because it really killed, like you said, it killed Rusev's kind of momentum. Even though he lost to Roman, I still thought he could have gone down a level and actually still been like a credible kind of monster heel. Mm-hmm. But just going up there against Goldberg and like a guy who he said in his own words was like a has-been, like an old time or whatever, and then you're getting laid out by him. It doesn't really say that much for you, in the end. And Goldberg as well, he could have got that reaction, like you said, from anybody. Mm-hmm. And even if I would have preferred to see him bring out Bo Dallas compared to Rusev. At least, like, he can be used that way, and actually, Bo Dallas can say, "Oh, I was there with Goldberg." Yeah, it's just crazy. I didn't really like the angle they were going for, and I think they're still hitting a load of trouble going into this. I think they should just play this out for what it is. It's just going to be Brock versus Goldberg, and I don't think they should put too much hope on having people cheer for who they wish them to cheer for. They should just have it as a history match, and I think Goldberg's under the assumption it's going to be his last one anyway, so just let it play out the way it does. I don't think you should plan it too much.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Bill Goldberg, I don't know if it's Vince McMahon or the WWE themselves. I mean, somebody somewhere seems to think that the reactions just got to be just so, but it doesn't. The thing is, though, Matt, let's be fair here. Even if the reaction does get brilliant, and everything's smooth going into Survivor Series, that there's no guarantee that night in front of Toronto, especially Toronto fans. They